It's not easy being black, y'all.
You have no real power.
Yurt, I want to tell you a story. A story about a woman ostracized and mocked from the first moment she ever entered school. I want you to try and imagine having your skin color weighed against you. Not only that, but your near opposite in both looks and true disposition is exalted by your peers. You speak hard truths while she spews venom-laced honey, but due to her fair skin, she gets the benefit of a doubt. This hypothetical is a very real occurrence for women of the African diaspora the world over, but I'm not referring to a black woman. Technically. I'm referring to the character Elphaba, whose story was synonymous with that of ethnic minority women long before Cynthia Erivo was cast as her in the, as of writing, upcoming film adaptation of the play by the same name, Wicked. When you're black, or any other ethnic minority for that matter, you have to get a little creative when finding representation in fiction. It comes with the territory. It's annoying, but you know, it is what it is. I'll try and keep things upbeat anyway. I want to explore how we interpret non-human characters, particularly those coded as African American. I also want to analyze how this race coding carries deep cultural and racial connotations and the significance of cultural competence when writing characters with complex race-adjacent identities. Today I want to use a few characters to analyze racial coding and how people identify with fictional non-human characters. I'll be using the character Elphaba from Wicked, as played by Cynthia Erivo in the film, as a dual example of 1. Writing a fictional, technically non-human character backstory in a way that resonates with ethnic minorities, as to make us ascribe meaning and identify with the lives of these characters. And 2, what's a way to say this that doesn't sound too pretentious? Okay, to help simplify things, these aren't just figures marked by the color green. Many of them carry narratives and associations that reflect the experiences of being other in ways that are parallel to those of Black Americans. In this essay, we'll explore how non-human green characters have come to embody qualities, experiences, and struggles that Black American audiences find relatable and even representative of our own cultural narratives. But I want to make a note that I've decided to stick with the color green to stay on theme because I'll be using a fair bit of referencing to Wicked, both the play and film, and also I want to give myself a bit of a challenge. Some honorable mentions from outside the color palette that I won't be going into are Darwin from Gumball, Skeeter from Doug, the Brain from Arthur, also Uniqua and Tyrone from Backyardigans because, duh. But before all of that, how about a little context? Okay, to start things off, I think it'd be beneficial to explain what associative color valences are. First 2 words, self-explanatory, associating a color with a thing. Boom. In this case, a valence. Now, a valence refers to the pleasantness or unpleasantness of an emotional stimulus. Nearly all events, experiences such as faces, sounds, music, art, pictures, written or spoken languages, and many others can be classified along this dimension as more or less positive or negative. Which in its simplest terms is the way that values of good or bad are ascribed to a person, place, or thing. In the West, a good example can be summed up in how colors like white and black have historically been imbued with moral attributes. White is impure, black is evil or dangerous. Now I want you to compare that with the average news cycle. Do you see a pattern? The symbolic weight of color in storytelling is not new. In Western culture, we often see a sharp dichotomy between white as a symbol of purity and black as a marker of evil. Historically, this color coding has a deep-rooted association in the portrayal of race, with whiteness representing safety or morality and blackness equated with darkness or danger. And it goes deeper than you might think.
Which doll is the black doll? And which one is the white doll?
That one.
Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because she's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because He's black.
Which doll looks most like you?
Like me.
Yeah, which one looks like you?
And that one.
Okay.
That doll.
And these were children. Babies. None of them can read, probably haven't had that many dealings with white children, but at that age they already understand that the odds and beauty norms are stacked against them. This is in part due to representation ethnic minorities have to contend with in the media. While things have been progressing in recent years, trying to find fictional characters that look like little brown kids is still challenging. A lot of the time, now and then, fans of a genre have to get creative to feel seen or imprint themselves on a character. That's why we gravitate to characters with rich backstories reminiscent of the cultural histories of ethnic minorities. The precise time that children begin to see themselves in relation to color as a racial marker and formulate ideas of relative value belonging to this group or that is debatable. Now, Tatum suggests that identity formation of children in the United States travels a different path from the children who belong to the dominant culture, i.e. white children. However, some researchers have indicated that children's literature, including picture books, play a role, along with forms of print and electronic media such as television, magazine images, and movies in providing visual images to children that give them cultural information about themselves. In other words, self-image in children is shaped in some degree by exposure to images found in written text, illustration, and films, and no shit. Moreover, it is clear that children, if they are to develop a positive self-image, need to see themselves or their images in text. Let's take it a bit further. In some superhero fiction, when it comes to good and evil, there are certain patterns with exception that emerge. The heroes are generally wearing rich, vibrant colors, lots of blues or reds. And the villains are in more muted tones, greens, blacks, musky purples. Then of course you have the anti-heroes that generally share the same color palette of the usual supervillain. Creators have used color, specifically green, to suggest otherness of characters, and this coding intersects with racialized traits and histories of ethnic minorities in a way that allows us to latch onto them. It's a color that sometimes embodies complexity, with characters often seen as outsider or different. Complexity and otherness are two characteristics associated with the figures I'll be going into, especially Elphaba, who, in the case of the Wicked film, is both a character with a rich history synonymous with that of ethnic minorities, and due to casting, an actual black person. There are green characters in fiction who are coded as minorities, often black, in ways that are both explicit and implicit. Examples include traits like marginalized position, a struggle for acceptance, and a complex cultural identity. And I found some surprising theories on Donatello and Michelangelo of the Ninja Turtles being black coded, and you know what, I kind of see it. The only ones with any real vibe, minding their business whether white foster brothers fight over power? I can definitely see it. Now, the notable green characters coded as African Americans that I'll be going into today are Kermit the Frog, Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z, and obviously Elphaba from Wicked.
It's not easy being green.
Kermit the Frog, with his iconic song, "It Ain't Easy Being Green," unintentionally became a symbol for those who felt different or alienated. For Black Americans, this song resonated on a deeper level. The refrain about the struggle and beauty of being green has been adopted by Black audiences as a sort of anthem for resilience and acceptance in the fate of societal adversity. Kermit's gentle insistence of self-acceptance offers a rare moment in children's media where a character openly grapples with identity, making his story one that transcends mere color association and embodies the challenges of other identities in a broader cultural context. It Ain't Easy Being Green, a song made famous by Kermit the Frog in Sesame Street and The Muppet Show, has transcended its origins as a simple, heartfelt tune sang by a beloved puppet. While ostensibly about Kermit's lament over his green color and feelings of invisibility and unimportance, the song has been embraced by ethnic minorities, particularly Black Americans, as an anthem for resilience, pride, and struggle for visibility and self-acceptance in a world that often marginalizes and overlooks them. The song begins with Kermit expressing dissatisfaction and a sense of inferiority associated with his green hue. He remarks, "It's not easy being green, have to spend each day the color of the leaves." This line invokes a sense of invisibility as green, a natural and omnipresent color, blends into the world around it, making it easy to overlook. For many ethnic minorities, this experience of feeling unseen or unappreciated resonates deeply. In societies dominated by standards and norms defined by a majority culture, people of color often struggle with feelings of erasure or being undervalued. Kermit's candid expression of this emotion captures a universal sentiment felt by those whose identities and experiences are routinely marginalized. However, the song takes a poignant turn. Kermit shifts from lament to contemplation, ultimately finding a sense of pride and self-acceptance. He sings, but
green's the color of spring, and green can be cool and friendly like, and green can be big like an ocean, or important like a mountain, or tall like a tree.
This transition from doubt to affirmation highlights a journey many ethnic minorities experience, moving from internalized experiences of inadequacy to recognizing beauty and power inherent to their identity. Kermit realizes his greatness. Kermit realizes that his greenness, once a source of shame, is part of what makes him unique and connected to this world. Similarly, people of color have often turned feelings of marginalization into a source of strength, using their heritage, culture, and community ties as a foundation of resilience. The final lines of the song, "It's beautiful and I think it's what I want to be," serve as a powerful declaration of self-acceptance. The journey from questioning one's value to embracing one's true self is one that ethnic minorities often navigate in societies where discrimination and prejudice are prevalent. For Black Americans in particular, the song has been adopted as a subtle but poignant anthem that echoes the sentiment of the Black is Beautiful movement of the 1960s and 70s, which challenged negative societal perceptions and celebrated Black pride and culture. The message of embracing one's identity, even when society suggests otherwise, resonates deeply with those who have had to fight for recognition and equality.
I want Goku's son to come with me for special training.
Let's discuss Piccolo's stoic, introspective nature and the interpretation of his green skin and outsider statuses as coding him as racially other or Black within anime fandom. In researching for this video, I came across an article and I want to share an excerpt before we get into our next topic. It's an article relating to a conversation the writer and a few others were having, including New York-based comedian Jabuki Young White. He emailed me with the highly intriguing subject line, "Sandy Cheeks, SpongeBob, Piccolo, Dragon Ball Z are Black." For Jabuki, Piccolo's backstory was very Black. His homeland Namek was ravaged by colonizers. He always felt slightly out of place around his non-Namekian friends, and a single-parent origin story. And he was always performing emotional labor for little reward. Many of the emails shared the same reasoning. Characters they felt were Black shared some similarities traditionally to Black experiences. Speaking with Lisa Nakamura, professor at the University of Michigan and author whose work focuses on race and how it's portrayed online, believes that there are plenty of reasons why white people aren't familiar with the concept of racialized cartoons. White people don't want to see race anywhere, Nakamura told me. They're discouraged externally and internally from noticing it because they're afraid that they're going to end up in trouble or being called straight up racist. Not only that, but Nakamura explained that white people, as any other person of color can attest to, generally avoid conversations about race. The risk of being shunned or being seen as racist far outweighs the benefit of having these conversations, she added. And that last point is unfortunately very real. I've lost a fair few white friends over the years because they're clearly unwilling to look past themselves. Which is something we have to do all the time. Look past ourselves. Past the representation we see and the limits placed on us. We don't have to be Mr. Popo when we can be Piccolo. And I'm not touching Mr. Popo right now, just no. But I thought Piccolo was Black from the moment I saw him pull up in that iron kufi. And I'm dead serious. Piccolo reminded me of a third of the good brothers we have back in Philly. You know, the only thing missing is the Sunni beard. And I'm saying kind of gruff, usually coming with very violent arguments, even if we dislike how they're being delivered to us, and represents a standard of masculinity that was very in line with Black culture. His Blackness always felt right to me. While the supporting character is green because of his alien Namekian heritage, his skin color is a standout visual trait among the series' principal cast, who mostly have light or white skin. Now, I was at a party the other night and we ended up on the topic of Black-coded characters, and I naturally brought up Piccolo. But the response I got warranted a bit of discussion. The more I think about it, Piccolo can also be seen as analogous with indigenous American cultures. You know, his homeland was ravaged by colonizers. There was a basic overall decimation of his population. He has his deep naturalistic roots and this mystified teacher vibe where he provides all the wisdom and training to these young white folk despite any detriment that it might have to his safety and or overall well-being. And you know what? I definitely see that. It just requires me to take a step back and get a broader view of the situation, something that we complain about our white counterparts not doing. We can make all the connections we want, but that does not mean that they're the only valid interpretations.
You think you're fearsome? Orc children have pets more fearsome than you.
Okay, this one may have been more topical and a better focus for this video if the movie didn't bomb. And put it like this, I love all schlocky garbage, and I didn't even know this movie existed until I saw a lime green Paula Patton on my Netflix feed. In Warcraft, Paula Patton's portrayal of Garona, a half-orc caught between warring cultures, touches on the tropes of the exotic and savage. Her green skin accentuates her otherness, often invoking real-world parallels with the colonialist gaze that marks non-European peoples as wild or untamed. Garona's character is caught between worlds, struggling with her identity and her loyalties, much like historically marginalized or colonized people. And this is one of those cases that has a bit of fuckery involved. Paula Patton is a biracial black woman portraying a wild hybrid orc character, but what side is the orc exactly? It leads into an important discourse surrounding the use of ethnic minorities to portray non-human characters that the primarily white human characters can stand juxtaposed from. The issue comes from the cultural lineage associated with the fictional races of these people. The orcs are usually coded as ethnic minorities and are often depicted as brutal savages. The easily forgettable film Bright is a good example. For those of you who missed it, it's just Training Day with magic. But the point I want to focus on is how the various social groups are categorized and represented as a whole. For starters, you see the elves, obviously coded as white and their equivalent of Beverly Hills. The affluence, style, facial structures, even body type all lean into anglicized standards of beauty that market white features as the most desirable. Then of course you have the orcs, obvious stand-ins for Latin Americans, primarily Mexican Cholo culture. And that's the rub, you know. Oftentimes, even now, brown people have to play mystical savages or tribal people. But back to green for a second. Though Warcraft only scratches the surface of Garona's potential complexity, her character's internal conflict is yet another example of green being used to depict an identity crisis that mirrors the experiences of black or biracial individuals in societies where they're seen as in-between. But what is truly frustrating is how the stand-in for black or ethnic minority is used as a stand-in for the savage side. Now here's another nerdy example. The Klingons from Star Trek. Now you don't need to know this show to understand this reference, because our pop culture is so saturated with Star Trek references that those who have never seen this show will recognize this picture. Now this is Worf, a Klingon from aforementioned Star Trek. He and his counterparts are usually, but not always, played by African Americans, and even when the actors are white, they will put on brown makeup, as the Klingons are a brown race of people. Now, is that blackface? I don't know. Now, Klingon society is based off a blend of several East Asian cultures, and they're also a warring culture with deeply nationalistic pride and an eagerness for battle. Basically a whole planet of black Air Force energy. I only bring him up to give you context of who I really want to talk about with this reference, and that's the character Beliana Torres. Now she's a half-Klingon Starfleet officer we meet several years and a handful of starships later as part of the crew of the Voyager. Well, we learned that as a biracial half-Klingon, she resents that part of herself, and having grown up with her and her mother being the only Klingons on her planet, she obviously developed identity crisis. And one of the more common tropes of black women depicted in media is that of the traumatized woman. 95% of what Tyler Perry makes, for example. And even in ideal circumstances, the marketing of black women needs a lot of improvement. Do you see the pattern? What is deemed as savage is also ethnic, in this case black, something to be ashamed of or outgrow. It's based partially on the fallacy of a utopian society and partially on the association of the white man's burden and the quote-unquote obligation to civilize brown races. It's something that Star Trek has suffered from since its early inception, but that part of the show isn't the point. The point is how we grapple with representation and how coding fictional characters as ethnic minorities can sometimes have troubling results.
Are people born wicked? Or do they have wickedness thrust upon them?
Elphaba's journey through rejection and self-acceptance has echoed with black audiences, especially as her transformation is rooted in systemic prejudice rather than inherent evil. Here, green signifies an oppressed identity, struggling against society that condemns her for her differences. Now, I have been writing a whole lot about women because I like to stay in my lane. I don't have the lived experiences to speak from that point of view. That being said, there is a need to speak on representation of black women in media, and as the nature of our main subject and background could be aligned with the struggles of black women, it's only fair that I do my part in whatever limited capacity that may be. And to be honest, this topic was just way too rich to pass up. I mean, the visual alone in this one picture was enough to get me into this. The other, cast as a black woman with full lips and a broad nose next to the wispy white-coated actress in her pink and fair beauty. Now, the prevailing images of black women in media are not created by black women. Because of that, among other factors, the control, or rather care needed in crafting these images is lacking. As a social construct, the hegemonic depictions of black characters in films often contribute to how black folks are defined and how their identities are constructed. For example, black women were and continue to be depicted as mammies, welfare queens, and Jezebels. These and other controlling images are intended to make racism, sexism, and poverty and other forms of social injustices appear to be natural, normal, and inevitable parts of everyday life. In family films, black women are more sexualized than white women, 13.5% and 9% respectively. In addition, black women, 41.4% in family films, were depicted as less attractive than white women, 51.2%, and other women of color, 56.9%. The further a demographic skews from cishet white male, the harder it is to control your image. Which is fitting because control of one's image is also a core theme and part of the premise surrounding the fuckery that is Elphaba's student life. Don't worry, this is for the most part spoiler free. But I do want you to understand that while exaggerated to extremes, the reaction to Elphaba at Shiz University, which is an awesome name by the way, are real in a way that immediate alienation is obvious. From the top of the show, when Elphaba enters the prestigious Shiz University, she is obviously outnumbered by 9 green people. Although the reactions to her screen are dramatized and exaggerated, they parallel the experiences of black women who have felt overly perceived, especially in predominantly non-black spaces. In the song The Wizard and I, the Shiz University headmistress Madame Morrible tokenizes Elphaba's magical abilities as she tells her, "If you work hard as you should, you'll be making good." This is painfully similar to the instructions that many black women receive. The only way to earn love and respect from peers, colleagues, and authority figures is through hard work because as a black woman, existing is simply not enough. This sentiment is something I've noticed being spoken about in various capacities my whole life, but I've also seen grow and increased conversations in the entertainment world with stars like Viola Davis speaking on the lack of roles and acknowledgement of the talent of black women in Hollywood. Elphaba immediately has to work twice as hard just to get half as far. Not only that, but her work is going to be used to make an otherwise inept leader look good, and these are not circumstances one can abide.
You have no real power.
From here, Elphaba makes a choice, refusing to accept these systems, and she is punished for it. And it is the reason Glinda's former name, her ditzy peer, is comically less qualified yet more celebrated. Not for her talents, but for her willingness to exist in a mold created for her. Again, I'm being limited with the details because it's a story that should be experienced firsthand, but understand that these reflections on her character that I just quoted came from a black woman. Michaela Gathers from the Crimson, and I'll leave a link to the full source. And I left out a lot because I didn't want to spoil the music for anyone that didn't already have any context. How she expresses her connection to the source material can help explain how black audiences sometimes interpret these green-skinned characters as a reflection of their own experiences. And the cultural appropriation or resonance of characters who stand out in predominantly homogeneous spaces. The intersection of fantasy with real-world identity illustrates why creators must be mindful of cultural significance embedded in characters they develop. Missteps in racial and cultural coding can reinforce harmful narratives, while thoughtful and intentional storytelling has the power to foster empathy and understanding. Cultural competence allows for richer, more respectful narratives that engage with race-adjacent and cultural-resonant characters' traits without leaning in stereotypes. The potential of missteps in race coding or otherwise associating non-human characters with cultural components of real-world civilizations is high. Realistically, there isn't a safe way to go about it. Someone somewhere will find themselves in a character just as someone is inevitably going to get offended. Without even seeing the comments on this video, I can already tell you that some people will get offended at my or any other minority coding non-black characters as black. Not only that, but the complaint will be about something that has already been reviewed or abundantly made clear in this analyzation. But the idea of race itself is enough to make some folks uncomfortable, like the acknowledgement that we live in a hyper-racialized society will make them guilty by default when that's not the case. They're complicit by default. Because they get to reap the benefits of aligning with the standards of Anglo-Europeans in a world that faults others for not meeting those same standards. They're part of the problem. Not the cause of the problem, but definitely part of the problem. Just like I maintain through action or inaction certain ideals of patriarchal society. Doesn't make me a misogynist, but I benefit from a culture that is. The risk of unintentionally perpetuating stereotypes when assigning cultural signifiers to characters that represent real-life marginalized groups is part of the territory when developing characters. The value of nuanced, culturally informed approaches in character development to avoid reductive or harmful portrayals cannot go unnoticed. But she is also and yes, Elphaba is green, but she is also very black even without Cynthia Erivo in the role. And that blackness is refreshing even if its nuance is missed. I'd be remiss not to at least mention the underlying queer message in the original text, but I'm saving all of that for a separate theory on queer erasure. Yeah, you just have to wait. This is one topic per video type of thing right now. Leaning into any queer history of this or any other character would have made it another hour, and I don't want to do these split video things where it's like, haha, gotta wait for more. Just when the queer video comes, it's going to get brought up again then. Just bear with me. Finding representation when there wasn't any intention or direct connection with a subject is part of the beauty of fiction and the beauty of being an ethnic minority. Going through the subtext, reading between the lines, and finding ourselves reflected in a passage is something we've always done. And that's why green is the new black. But what do I know? I'm just a pretty nigga. I'll be that pretty motherfucker.